Hi, this is Steve Florison. This is Unit 3B. It's an explanation of the assessment. This assessment takes you from CHCS 400C, which is a level 4 unit, up to CHCS 502C, which is a level 5 unit, more of a management or managerial sort of unit. So I'm just going to run you through the questions and give you an indication of the sort of answers that we're expecting for this. So question 1 is describe how you conduct an induction session to explain to new staff key responsibilities of the youth worker role and the main topics you would cover. There are some prompts here like when, where, how and key points. When obviously is going to be the induction at the start of the year if this person's starting at the start of the year and along with other people, so the induction meeting for the new staff at the start of the year, or you may have a staff member that starts during the year and they have their own induction just when they arrive. So that's the when. Now the where and the how depends a bit on where you are and your operation, but the key points are pretty important here. The key responsibilities for the residential youth worker role, the general points here are things like youth work values and ethics, which came out of Unit 18, boundaries, duty of care, relationship, rapport, all of those sort of things. And things that are specific to your actual residents are your organisation's policies and procedures, the student code of conduct, rules, etc., specific duties, times, groups, rosters, and information about equipment, buildings, vehicles, all those sort of things. These are the sort of things that we say people should know, residential youth workers should know before they set foot in your residence. So that was question 1. Question 2 is, how can you get staff to accept responsibility for their own actions and be accountable? Well, you would discuss this with staff and you would talk to them about it, talk to them about how they are accountable for their own actions, review practice with them, review specific incidents, to just point out and to make it very clear that staff actions and staff practice have consequences, to look at and discuss examples and scenarios, and to really encourage self-reflection. Encourage staff to talk to their peers and seek peer feedback as well. So that was question 2. Question 3 is, how could you ensure that organisation policies and procedures are being addressed in your residence? And one of the first things, of course, is just to observe practice. Have a look at how people are doing the job. Are they observing, following, carrying out policies and procedures? Ensure that staff know policies and procedures and at least know where they can access policies and procedures. Where are they? Are they on a computer? Are they in a book? Where are they? And discuss policies and procedures at meetings, staff meetings. It really should be a standing agenda item. And I know sometimes people they feel that policies and procedures can be very dull, boring, etc. But they are absolutely foundational to our practice. Question 4 is, how can you encourage staff to get students involved in decision making? Well, this is important too, to empower students. So just helping staff with the process, helping them establish a process for involving students in decisions. Empowering students, setting up student councils, having student meetings about specific events like the recreation event that's going to occur this weekend or that sort of thing, just to develop an ongoing process where students are involved in these decision making. Question 5, how could you initiate and review organisational policies and procedures and get other staff involved in this? This should be an ongoing process. This is a best case scenario if it is a continual ongoing process so that everybody has a bit of a stake in this. They know what the policies and procedures are. They've had a hand in putting the policies and procedures together. A best case scenario is if it is an ongoing process. It could be a standing agenda item at staff meetings or particular staff meetings, the start of term or end of term staff meetings, those sort of things. Or you could set aside a block of time, a couple of days, to review policies and procedures. And you could also really encourage staff to be proactive. If they can see a policy or procedure that's not working, that doesn't exist, then help them to be proactive about saying something about it and being part of the process to develop that policy or procedure. Question 6 says, how would you ensure that staff have clarity and are not operating outside their scope of the work role or crossing ethical boundaries? It's a good question, isn't it? So again, you really need to observe ongoing practice. Make sure that you know what staff are doing and that they are not crossing boundaries. Make sure staff have a very clear understanding of their role and how far their role goes, and that they're not stepping outside their role and doing something that is not really their job or might be somebody else's job. And make sure that staff have a very clear understanding of boundaries, that this sort of stuff is in writing, that staff do boundaries training. Discuss particular events and also discuss scenarios. Scenarios are always great for this sort of thing. Question 7, so how could you ensure that student rights are being protected in the residence and that there is respect for student diversity? Again, by observing, observe practice, observe staff practice, be out there looking at what's happening. Ensure staff have a very clear understanding about rights and diversity, that there's discussion about these sort of things, that there's training. Discuss particular events, and again, scenarios are very useful for this sort of thing. Question 8 says, what process would you recommend staff use to recognise and discuss ethical dilemmas and report unethical conduct? And so the point here is that there must be really a organisational policy about this. The organisation should have a policy or a procedure to deal with unethical conduct by staff, and the process that other staff use to report that conduct. And if you don't have a process for that, there are lots of other organisations that do have very good, very robust, workable processes, and you can use, people are very good about sharing those sort of things these days, so you can use those to develop your own policy or procedure. It's really important that there is a policy and procedure so that everybody is very clear, understands completely what will happen if there is a complaint, how it will be dealt with, all of those sort of things. Question 9 is, how would you encourage parents, staff, students to express their concerns or to make complaints? Every organisation has or should have a complaints procedure. This should be a written complaints procedure for staff, for students, for parents, and people should be familiar with this. It's great just to make this easy to use, and you know that says something about your organisation. It basically says we're not afraid of complaints. We encourage complaints because we realise that will help us to improve our practice. So if you can have a very visible complaints procedure, make sure that if it's based around a form, that those forms are available, that sort of thing. Question 10 says, if you're informing staff about legal guardians, what website would you use? So to do this, I just went straight to Google and just put in WA, because I'm in WA right at the moment, and I put in their WA legal guardians, and the first entry up the top is the one that I want, and I went to that, and it had some information about guardianship, and so it's quite easy to find that for your particular state. So if you can have a look at that, it's interesting to read it, particularly as it relates to children, and it would be good if you can have a look at that and read it, but at least show us where you're going to find it. So I hope that helps a little with answering these questions for 3B. Thank you very much.